baby! Let's go! It's time! Stripes, Cincinnati, we gon' rise and up. In the jungle, we united up. Trippin' orange and black and white. Whole day when we fight, live and die in these stripes. Now who gotta move rockin' on? Now who wanna move crossing on? Now who wanna move out on? If you got stripes and you let the city know you rock 'em, yeah, we got 'em, yeah, we fought 'em. Like that black and orange up on 'em, finger bottle, never stop it, till the beast and on 'em. Who they rockin' with the diamond stripes, flossing on the ring, Cincinnati, she's our queen, we gon' show the world who king. Orange in the day, black in the night, stripes in our veins.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Bengals and Brews. It is fantasy season. I am Houday Joe. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Orange Arrow. Identity is masked for this episode. And we have the pleasure of joining us is from FantasyPros, Joe Pisapia and Andrew Hall. Thank you so much for joining. We know you guys are busy. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Yeah, I'm happy to be on the show. And I'm so happy the Arrow is in costume. Aren't you, Andrew? I almost had in my contract. I said, he's got to be in full costume if I'm going to come on the show.
I was thinking, like, should I be in costume? Like, should I have to,
I thought this was your costume.
I should
This is not your costume?
No, this is the Clark Kent. This is the costume. That's what I said. That's what you're going for. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. We're going to talk lots of fantasy stuff. Everyone in the chat, if you got some fantasy questions for Andrew and Joe, we will definitely try to get to them as we have time. So starting out, as Bengals diehards, sometimes we get a little tunnel vision with fantasy, and we try not to be homers, but it's hard sometimes. So my first question for you guys, is there a Bengals player we should be fading and put aside our fandom as we're looking at our drafts? We'll start with you, Joe, and I'll give Andrew, the Bengals diehard, a chance to think about it.
Well, look, I'm very excited about Jamar Chase being the number one overall pick this year. I've kind of said that, him and Justin Jefferson, you could split hairs over there, but I feel like there's a real special potential season there with Joe Burrow and himself. If they can all play 17 games together healthy, no one has any other interruptions in the season, it could be one of those rare, special 45, 50 touchdown kind of years. Like, I feel like that's in the range of outcomes, as my friend Derek Brown likes to say. So I'm very excited about that duo. They're coming at the correct ADP, though, because Jamar Chase is premium, and then Joe Burrow is, going where he's going currently, which is probably in the right lane. Where it gets tricky is after that, because if that happens and is prolific, yes, T. Higgins is still going to eat. He's still going to be a pretty good guy. He was still a wide receiver one last year, which shows you that you can, with the right offense, have more than one wide receiver one in terms of fantasy points. And a lot of people kind of stray away from that. T. Higgins is still good enough to be that guy, but if Chase ends up having that alpha season, is going to eat into it a little bit. Boyd is a guy that I wouldn't touch. Tight end position, again, is not one that they've showed us they really want to use. The Joe Mixon one is the wild card. And I'm fascinated to hear what Andrew has to say about him, because had they gone out and done a little bit more in terms of getting some more bodies behind him, then maybe I would have said, okay, well, maybe Joe Mixon we should worry about. But because they haven't, and I don't love, everyone keeps throwing out that same nonsense about, well, in the second half of the season, Joe Mixon from week 9 had 7 touchdowns. I'm like, yeah, but he had 5 in one game. So let's not pretend like it was this prolific second half either. That's a very misleading stat you see starting to float around the Twitter fantasy space. I think Joe Mixon is an interesting calculated risk. I think that's the best way I could possibly put it right now. I think if you go heavy wide receiver early, you can look back and see Joe Mixon and say, okay, I can take a shot on this guy where the offense is going to be good. Maybe last year was growing pains of the offensive line. Maybe I can buy into it. But, for the most part right now, he's going in that same range as guys like, ironically, Travis Etienne, who's another guy that I'm not thrilled with position situation-wise. Joe Mixon. Then you got Chris Olave, T. Higgins. Aaron Jones, I think, is in a clearer position than he is. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is a little bit more upside in PPR league. So it's an interesting spot where he is with Joe Mixon. And personally, there's just other kinds of players I'm looking to draft instead of him. But I'm fascinated to see what Andrew's take is on these guys, especially Mixon.
Well, I don't know why you think I'm a Bengals homer. I don't know what in the world would tell you I'm a Bengals fan. I don't know if anybody's watching. If you could see any of this room, like, geez, I don't like the Bengals. What are you talking about, Houday? But no, what I'm going with here is more of I think you're hitting the nail on the head on all of that, Joe. I think Chase is obviously a stud. Burrow obviously a stud. T stud B, like stud in the making, like no issues there. Mixon is a character. Mixon is an interesting one because I think if you can get him in like the 5th, 6th round as your RB2, I think you'll be happy. But the catch is, if you really want to get him, you got to reach. And I don't know why you would reach, and I don't know why you really want to get him. He hasn't really proven himself to be like a stud RB1, dependable, set it and forget it kind of running back. Not only is his running back performance not that great, but he's not always on the field. He's been injured a lot. So I think that RB2 kind of spot is nice for me. And again, if he's with those guys like you're talking about with Aaron Jones and ETN, I'd probably rather have Aaron Jones over him myself. I agree with you. I think they're going to lean on Aaron Jones a lot in Green Bay. They don't need to lean on Mixon in Cincinnati, right? But they didn't draft anybody of consequence. I mean, Chase Brown, not slamming the guy. I say all the time, like, he's better at this than I will ever be at anything. Chase Brown is better at this, right? But he's not a threat to Joe Mixon. You haven't seen him do anything literally as good as Chase Brown is at football. But the thinking is more like, Travion Williams is still there. Maybe he's the guy. Chris Evans is still there, who I really like a lot. But they just drafted Charlie Jones to do some punt return work. So maybe he's on the outs. I mean, there's just not a lot of threat like P. Ryan was last year. So there could be an uptick in production. And him signing that lower contract and kind of locking it in for 2 years, I think helps a lot too. Obviously, Joe, I play a lot of Dynasty, and we have a whole Dynasty podcast and everything, Dynasty Junkies. And I think a lot of times we talk about things in the eye of Dynasty lens. In terms of redraft, I have no problem at all drafting Mixon this year. I think he's in. I think they're going to make a Super Bowl run. They're going to be in the red zone a lot. So I don't mind getting Mixon again as an RB2. I don't want to reach for him, though. I don't want to, put all my eggs in that basket, even though I am a homer and love Mixon. That's bad process. And I try to avoid
He's the RB16 overall. Yeah. And that is very reasonable considering he plays in a good offense. And I think that's the thing where you start to look at the situation of, wanting guys in good offensive ecosystems, something we talk about on Fantasy Pro Show, and I always talk about in the Black Book. And Mixon is that guy. So as long as it hovers in this 16 value, I'm good. If it starts to tick up closer to 12, I think that's when the conversation starts to go in a different direction. And I'll also just pointing out too, the kinds of players that are around in this ADP are very intriguing. Jay Hawkinson was really the number 2 in that offense. I don't care what anybody wants to tell you about Addison. Hawkinson's the number 2 guy. Calvin Ridley potentially could have a huge bounce back. I mean, it's a lot more upside with players like that, even Jerry Jeudy. So it's also the kinds of players in particular, not just running backs, that are going in that same ADP, which is why I probably won't have a lot of shares of Joe Mixon. But I do think if he should fall to this range or even a little lower, that he's worth selecting. But it's not without its pitfalls. And it's also a situation where I'm not hedging it because, as Andrew pointed out, none of the guys behind him have anything to offer of any proven commodity whatsoever. So it's not like you could say, well, I'm going to hedge this backfield. Like I have all the Damian Harris because it's cheap right now, because I'm not buying any James Cook. And Damian Harris, I know, is a 3-down back who has goal line potential. That's good enough for me. Oh, wait, he's going towards the end of drafts. Awesome. None of the other Bengals guys have proven anything like that, which is why Mixon stays relevant, but also why there's no hedge either, which makes it kind of a difficult situation.
Yeah, that's great insight. And I could see a wide range of outcomes for Mixon. And, the thing I always look at when evaluating for fantasy, I look at talent, opportunity, and age. And he's definitely got some talent. He's definitely got the opportunity. He's not on the wrong side of, that 27 where running backs really start to deteriorate. So I know he's got volume, and that could be enough. And I've heard some analysts even be like, maybe Mixon is this year's Josh Jacobs. Now, Jacobs was going a lot later last year. But Josh Jacobs really kind of came out of nowhere. He had volume and he had some good seasons, and it reminds me a lot of how we're viewing Mixon, but Mixon is being propped up a little bit more. And the one other thing about Mixon, especially if you play in full PPR leagues, he had a career high 60 catches last year, and his rushing numbers don't look as good, but he made up for that as the Bengals switched to shotgun and really caught the ball. Derek, did you have anything to add on Mixon, or want to go on to a next question?
Am I back now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry. No, my internet was cutting out. Of course. It hasn't done it in how many times, but no, I just following up on Mixon, I was going to ask, as far as the upside, what do you see his ceiling potentially being?
I'll go first. Yeah, I'll go first. I think his ceiling is running back 3 overall. Like, honestly, like he's got a very high ceiling, but that is a very, very low chance of hitting that ceiling. So that's why I tend to look like you were saying with Debro, right? Like range of possible outcomes. A running back 3 or 4 is very unlikely. I just don't see that kind of season coming. And being realistic, I'm probably going to think running back 8 is probably where I feel comfortable putting his ceiling is kind of like confidently. And again, I don't mind buying in at the running back 8 ceiling, but his floor is running back 30. You know what I mean? Like his floor is really low. So if you're definitely looking for upside and risk, Mixon's your guy, right? Something I've talked about and actually written articles on FantasyPros about is, drafting for risk and like balancing that out. If your first 3 or 4 picks are nice, steady, high floor options, then I don't mind at all going with a risky guy like Mixon, and kind of balancing out your team, adding a little risk to your player list. So that's kind of where I look at it. But I mean, Joe, do you think even RB8 is too high? Is that crazy talk to you to think of a ceiling?
No, I think 8 is the ceiling. I don't think 3 is realistic.
Well, I thought 3 is like the extreme. Yeah.
But I don't even think 3 is realistic. The only way 3 could happen is if Jamar Chase went down for a significant period of the season, because even last year you say, well, the receptions were up, but Chase missed 4 or 5 games. So you put Chase back in there and there's 40 targets right there, that are going away over that span. So it's just a matter of the math. And, I mean, there are variants year over years in these things and stuff like that. But typically speaking, you kind of have the identity, especially when there's continuity with quarterback and head coach and offense. And you kind of know what you're going to get out of these teams for the most part. That's why I like those teams, because you can actually kind of predict and get close to really identifying who they are. It's why last year in Denver was such a giant trap, because there were so many unknowns. A first-time head coach, or a guy coming over to a new system in Russell Wilson with a whole new group of personnel. We saw how that worked out. It wasn't a great situation last time. In fact, it was historically bad. Right. Situations like the Bengals are a lot easier. I would say RB 8 or 9 is certainly, I think, the ceiling there. It's a pretty good group in that top 10 or even 12, if Breece Hall is healthy to start the year. But I think, looking back at that number of receptions, yes, it was a career high, but I'm not 100% sold that he'll be needed to do that same number again. And that, I think, is something that you don't want to go and use that as the demarcation of saying, yes, that's why Mixon's good. I think what you want to do is say, yes, the Bengals are going to be a very good offense if everything stays healthy and clicks. Therefore, Mixon will have, hopefully, more scoring opportunities and won't be as strange of a season in terms of touchdowns the way it was, because it was. And those can be very weird year over year. We all know that. So touchdowns are the hardest thing to predict, but typically speaking, eventually we think that'll even out a little bit. So Mixon, like I said, where he is, good investment, but don't draft him for that ceiling, because I think that's kind of a potentially dangerous spot. Then you reach and then you might fail.
Yeah, totally. Fair. Now, one question, and this is strictly hypothetically speaking, if you were in, say, a slow draft and you had guys like, I don't know.
And you're on the clock right now.
Like guys like Travis Kelce, T. Higgins, Chris.
This is hypothetical, right? This isn't actually happening
strictly
to you.
Hypothetical.
Asking for a friend.
Yes, asking for a friend.
Okay. Who are the guys on the board?
So guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, I know how Houday Joe feels about him, because he was on the Gibbs train when we were in draft season. Christian Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Williams, Joe Mixon. Would you be looking to, because I've went 0 RB up until now, or this hypothetical situation has
right, not you, the guy who's drafting.
This
guy. So what are the wide receivers you have now?
Right now I have Olave and T. Higgins. Would you?
Who was your first overall pick then in this?
My first overall pick was Kelce. I just wanted to see, because this is
Kelce, Olave, Higgins, and now Jahmyr Gibbs is on the board. You said, I think that's a good way to start. I think I understand Mixon being that safer one, but especially if I were in a podcast about the Bengals, the last thing I want to do here every day is ruin my Sunday with also maybe Joe Mixon not performing as well. That's tough. If it's a PPR league, especially, Jahmyr Gibbs is really interesting, because what happens is, and I'm sure Andrew will speak to this too, like that DeAndre Swift role is a real thing, that they really wanted to run the offense that way, and it just never came to fruition because of his injuries, because he just never developed into the player that they thought he was going to be. Jahmyr Gibbs is that player. He is explosive. He's an incredible route runner. He's got great hands, all those things. I know Andrew and all the dynasty guys out there are just, chomping at the bit to roster him as much as possible. I'm not afraid of rookie running backs. I mean, I'm the guy that's got Bijan number 1 overall, and I'm not crazy because I've only done this twice before, and both times I was right about it. It was Zeke
Yep.
rookie season, and it was Saquon rookie season. And both of those two guys finished as RB2 overall those 2 years.
Really going out on a limb.
When I go out on a well, but here's the thing. At the time,
I know
to that point, at the time, it was out on a limb. Like in the black book, I had Zeke as the 10th overall player his rookie year. Saquon going into the season, 8th overall player. People thought it was nuts. And people said, well, yeah, Zeke, I get it because he came into a good situation on a team that was, really good with a great offensive line. Saquon did it with a 5-win awful Giants team. So it doesn't matter. Like Bijan can still be that guy. But the point is, like Jahmyr Gibbs in a PPR, I think if you've gone already so fade the RB, he's a great guy because I think he's gonna rack up already a good floor of points with the targets and receptions and the yardage. And then if you add in touchdowns, it's almost like that cheap cheat code way out of running back. And I would rather go with the younger guy personally, even though it's a little unproven. I'm not sure where Andrew lies, but I would go with Gibbs here.
I would actually agree. And I think part of this too goes back to your team build and everything. Like I mentioned before, you've got a lot of steady players, I think, there. And Gibbs has probably got just as much upside and maybe a higher floor than Mixon does. I also think it's interesting because you've already got Higgins. And I feel like in my life, and a lot of times when I'm in leagues, I like to have one Bengals player on my team just because it makes Sundays a little more fun, right? But I try really hard not to have two because then I'm getting into homerism, right? Like I don't want that.
Yeah.
So if you've already got T, I feel like passing on Mixon makes more sense anyway. And if it's a Cincinnati league or some sort of fan league or something like that, then you might not get him on the way back. But if it's a generic league with the random people who aren't Bengals fans, you might get Mixon in the next round because there's still so many question marks about him. So I always say you got to play the room. And I think taking value is always the way to go. So yeah, for me, it's definitely Gibbs. And I think Joe hit on all the things I was going to say is that the PPR upside, all that, the Detroit offense is going to look good this year. Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that are going to make you very happy about taking Gibbs here. But I mean, I love that Dale is in the chat. Can we put that up? Like this is just terrific.
Fellow co-hosts of Bengals and Brews wanting to know what the hell I'm doing right now. Because
Miss you,
listen, buddy. Dale, and I said listen, so I'll take a drink. But I told Mr. Pisapia over there, next time he was on, I would suit up.
Yep.
And I couldn't find my mask,
his word.
So I just went with I asked my wife, I said, hey, where's your makeup at? No, I'm just kidding.
I need to borrow your mascara again.
Yeah.
I love it. That's dedication, my friend. But no, back to fantasy for a second. I think you're probably going to feel
with that,
better.
Andrew.
I'm trying to segue like a Joe Pisapia. But I think you're going to be happier with Gibbs. And then if you can get Mixon next round, that would be happy too. So like I don't mind that at all for a 0 RB team. And again, 4th round isn't a bad spot to lean on Mixon or look at Mixon.
Round, actually. I might have picked Burrow in the 4th round.
Oh, okay. So even better. All right. So Burrow in the 4th is your 5th round pick. Then I would still take Gibbs there for sure. I think round doesn't matter as much at that point. Is there any sort of like is it a super flex league where you need 2? Because I would assume not if Burrow's still there, right?
Best ball.
It's a underdog fantasy.
Oh, perfect. League. Okay. So. Then yeah, you're doing all right. You're doing all right. If it's best ball, I want Gibbs even more, to be honest with you. I think Gibbs is upside in best ball. You don't have to worry about it. Just put him in there. I think you're going to be good.
Yeah, Derek already alluded to it. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I was pounding the table for him at what pick did we draft at? 28?
28,
yeah.
And people thought that was like a huge reach. And then the Lions go and pick him at 12. And I was like, well, that dream is dead. But Joe, the one thing that I wanted to expand on was the Bijan 1 overall. Again, hypothetical.
Well, running back, number 1 running back.
Yes, number 1 running back.
Yeah.
Still the boys at the top. Still Jamar, still JJ. And everyone thought I was nuts last year when I said Justin Jefferson was the number 1 player overall. Not so nuts now, am I?
You're nuts, but not for those reasons, Joe.
Well, that's a fair point. That's a fair point, Andrew.
I know a guy that's in a keeper league where everybody can keep 2 players. So pretty much 20 out of the top 40 players are being kept. And a friend of mine has the number 1 overall pick and will be faced with the decision of CMC or Bijan. And because all the top receivers, Jefferson, Chase, all those guys are being kept. So when I first got the number 1 pick, I was like, oh, I'm taking Bijan. Like, McCaffrey's starting to age. He's got the injury risk. He had a great year last year, but I'm taking Bijan. But now the fantasy analysts as a whole have convinced me to take McCaffrey.
Your friend. You've convinced your friend.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, I keep,
Mhm.
I
We're
keep
trying to maintain the
I don't know who this
charade.
me is.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean the facade is crumbling quickly.
So sell
Shocker.
my friend on Bijan over McCaffrey.
Well, first of all, my question is this: can you keep the players you select in the first round?
Yes, you.
Well, there's your
you
answer
give
right
up.
there.
You give up the
Firstborn
round where
child.
they're drafted.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay,
like,
so yeah,
So for example, I'm keeping, or excuse me, my friend's keeping Ken Walker and Travis Etienne for
like
a
that guy
10-14
is
team.
right. Yeah.
Your
Well, here's the
friend's
thing.
friend. Yeah.
Premium players are premium players for a reason. They help you win championships. All the other
Mhm.
stuff can always get figured out later. If you can keep Bijan Robinson, I'm keeping Bijan Robinson. And I'm a betting man, right? If say that phrase, if I were a betting man, and I am, lucky for you guys. I'm looking at next year's board, trying to project into the future. Look, the Falcons are a team that has to run the football with a coach that has a history of running the football very well with Arthur Smith, who, an offensive line that got Tyler Algier 1,040 yards last year, for God's sakes. Tyler Algier, 1,000+ yards last year. I just, I understand the quarterback play is in question there. I get that. But I keep coming back to the same thing, which is the same, the initial instinct you had, I think, is right, which is McCaffrey's got a lot of miles. He's going also to be, I think managed very particularly, and carefully. You've also got a lot of uncertainty in that quarterback situation too. If Brock Purdy really, it's hard right now because it's July. So if Brock Purdy isn't 100% to start the season, isn't the guy, then what is it? Is it Trey Lance? Is he capable? Does the offense, click with him? God forbid, is it Sam Darnold running the offense? I mean, these are real questions we have to ask ourselves because they're legitimately all possible September scenarios. And then on top of that, you have what you saw last year with McCaffrey was once Eli Mitchell was healthy and back, he was getting some opportunities there, and they were trying to manage McCaffrey because their goal is to look. Shanahan has come close.
Mm-hmm.
McCaffrey is going to be in bubble wrap as much as he needs to be to get them through the season. And at this point, I look at Bijan being the younger back, the guy that can block, the guy that can run, the guy that can catch the football, the guy that can run up in the slot. I mean, Bijan is a better, to me, I mentioned Saquon and Zeke in the rookie seasons. Bijan to me blows those guys out of the water in terms of running back prospects from my visuals and what I've been watching him in Texas for the last couple of years. And I've known about Bijan for 6 years now because Scott Bogman, Andrew knows Boggs, our friend. His uncle, his friend, I guess he's friends with Bijan's uncle, and he was telling him when the kid was 14 years old, you gotta know about my nephew Bijan, blah blah blah. And we Bijan, we're like, okay, who's this kid? And then eventually he goes to Texas, we're like, oh look, there he is. So we've been watching this kid for a long time, and we knew who he was, and we knew who he was going to be. So we're kind of in there, and I just think if you have a keeper situation involved, you're looking at Bijan because there's so much more future ahead, even if it's slightly disappointing this year, and of course that could happen.
Yep.
The potential future there for the next 3-4 years, what does that look like for Christian McCaffrey? I'd rather be out a year early on McCaffrey and in a year too early on Bijan. That's how I would address it.
Awesome. Andrew, any thoughts? Bijan
I'll
versus
second most of that and just use the keeper thing as the tie break, right? I think that's kind of where I lean to. If it was in a vacuum, you could honestly flip a coin. I think you're probably fine either way because they both have question marks, very small, lowercase question marks, right? Itty bitty tiny question marks. You're doing fine either way. You're not going to pick wrong. I mean, obviously hindsight is different, right? But at this point, you're not going to make a pick that's that's it. I'm going to bat. We're taking Josh Jacobs 1-on-1. No, we're not doing that, right? So no matter what, you're going to make the right pick. And I think that helps a little bit. But the keeper thing is definitely where I lean toward Bijan because I think the chances of him being a first round pick next year are higher than Christian McCaffrey's chances. And if you can only keep a few players or something, right? 2 players each. Okay, so you're keeping other players that were not first-round picks last year. Who was your first-round pick last year that allows you to pick this? Was it a running back? Do you remember? Because that's kind of where I want to go with
this.
Well,
it wasn't his team. Remember, this is some other.
my friend.
Yeah, ask your friend.
I don't know. He'd have to go a lot of research. But
where I'm going to this, those running backs are usually pretty steady year to year. But when they fall off a cliff, they fall off a cliff, and that we've seen that already kind of happen with McCaffrey, and he recovered and has kind of come back, and is still McCaffrey. That cliff is still coming for him, and Bijan is years away from that cliff. So that's kind of where, again, I'm leaning toward that, protecting a little bit of the future asset, giving you that option next year to keep Bijan in the first could be a game changer. your friend could have the best team in the league. You know what I mean? Like that would just be broken. So I think with CMC, you're not wrong, but you're probably less wrong with Bijan.
Right. Yeah, Bijan is an amazing prospect. I've been the most impressed with him as I get more into the draft since Saquon came out. And I know, Joe, you even said better than Saquon.
Cleaner in the total package, to be honest, and Saquon got run into the ground in Penn State too. And like Bijan's just, it's not the combine either too. Like I'm talking about like watching games and what this guy does in games. And then you go and you watch him in the combine, you're just like, my God, everything is just so easy for him. He's so strong. He's so big. He's so fat. Like he is like if you made him in a lab. And I think these kind of guys just don't come around very often. It's like, and I remember, when Adrian Peterson's rookie year, Andrew, you probably remember this too. Although I'm older than everybody, I'm sure, that he came in the league with a knee injury. And I remember getting a discount on him in every single draft I got because I was like, well, you guys, I know what this guy is because I watched that guy play.
Yeah.
And that guy is a terror. Like he is going to destroy the NFL. And sure enough, for a decade, that's pretty much what he did. And sometimes you got to put that little bit of risk there with that young player. Because if you do it, especially in a keeper scenario, you then all of a sudden become, one of these teams that could be like a legacy team. You could be one of these teams that just goes out there every year and you have the best start of any other team because you got two premium guys. Like if you start with a Bijan and a Chase or something like that, my God, for the next 3 years, that's going to be a really great way. Everyone's going to be looking up at you in the standings. So get the premium guy.
That's what your friend wants is to be.
That's what your friend wants.
Yes, I appreciate it. Hopefully my friend's watching. I'll send him the link.
Let us know how your friend does.
So going back to trying not to be a homer, who is an AFC North rival of the Bengals? A player on the Steelers, Ravens, or Browns that we should not be sleeping on. Not an obvious, first 3-round guy, someone a little bit later that you guys really like going into 2023. Joe, we'll start with you.
I'm a big Elijah Moore guy. I think when you take
down.
Elijah Moore is that guy for me that really comes right away. He's going as like the wide receiver 49 right now, or it's just absurd. Everyone was so excited about this guy last year, right? And then everyone all of a sudden a year later is out. Like all of a sudden he's not any good. Like he played literally with the worst quarterback play you could possibly fathom last year. They were 29th in points scored with the Jets. I mean, Zach Wilson and Mike White. And, I know Mike White was the best of them, but still Joe Flacco and God knows what else they were throwing out there on a weekly basis, right? It was horrendous. And then, now you drop him into an offense where he's going to get slot opportunities. Now, I know people like Njoku, but, I think when, watching enough Deshaun Watson in my life, that if you can get him that safety blanket wide receiver in the slot, he's going to look for that guy. And now that you don't have Kareem Hunt in this offense anymore.
Yep.
You have some unproven other guys in the backfield. It's going to take a little while for those guys to really, I think, ingratiate themselves with the coaching staff and ingratiate themselves into the offense where all of a sudden they're going to be fantasy viable in any way. So I'm looking at where those targets are going. Donovan Peoples-Jones' contract's up at the end of the year. Like, I don't see any point in like trying to feed him the football or really get excited about him. Elijah Moore is a guy that they traded some draft capital for, and I think it was very interesting he was available, and he just wanted out, and I don't blame him. Like, he was disenfranchised. Some wide receivers are divas. I get it. He was pissed off. They were pissed off that he wasn't a good soldier, whatever. But you know what? It's hard to be a good soldier when you're looking at Zach Wilson and you're trying to make money for yourself. He gets sent to Cleveland. He's a really interesting one. Zay Flowers is an interesting one too. Another rookie wide receiver, but at the same time, I love this kid. I love the makeup of the kid. I love he's got, that, I hate that phrase, but he's got that dog in him. He really does. For a small
Zay or Elijah?
Zay. Elijah's great, but Zay Flowers is another one too. You asked for guys in the same division. I know they brought in Odell Beckham. Rashad Bateman's never on the field. It's always lower body injuries. That's death to wide receivers. Zay Flowers fights for the football. He is fast. He is explosive. He is fun to watch. He is that kind of guy that you want to get the football to. Like he's just, it's hard to put your finger on it, but he's that guy. And I think it's not going to take very long for Lamar Jackson to recognize that in this offense. So there's a couple guys. The Steelers don't have as many of them. I'd say Freiermuth would be the late guy for me because I think there's some touchdown upside coming back in his favor soon. young quarterbacks typically, like to look for the tight end too as they're continuing to develop. And I liked him out of Penn State. I thought he was a great player there. So I thought it was just a matter of time. Had he not been in the same draft class as Pitts, we would have talked a lot more about Freiermuth, but he was with Pitt, so that's all anybody wanted to talk about. So those are 3 guys, one on each team, that I think people should really be circling late in drafts.
Yeah, and I'll kind of follow up with that and quickly go through some of mine. I mean, Elijah Moore is one of those that I think is kind of a polarizing topic. I'm not an Elijah Moore guy, but I totally get the logic, especially in redraft, where it's not like you have to spend a lot to get him. He's probably on waivers in after your draft, right? I mean, like, you're risking very little to put him on your team most likely, and he does have a lot of upside. My Browns player, though, would have to be Nick Chubb. I just think he's still getting a little bit disrespected. He had a really bad year with the
but he's a second round player. Joe wanted late round guys.
Again, I'm
taking him in the first round. I'm the president of the Chubb Club.
I know. I figured you were a fan of the Chubb. So I know that you love Chubb. Let's just put it that way. So I'm saying
I got the t-shirts being made up right now. I saw the prototype at FantasyPros.
It's not really it's not really a sleeper. So it's not really an answer.
Andrew.
I'm just saying I like Chubb because I wanted us to agree about Chubb, Joe. But Chubb is terrific. We love Chubb. The other player that I like this year, not really a sleeper, Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to have a good year. I think Mark Andrews is going to have a good year. All these guys are obvious, right? The one that I'm going to lean on as an actual sleeper of this division is Deontay Johnson. And I think a lot of people are like letting him go and kind of kicking him to the curb, especially in Dynasty. He had 0 touchdowns last year. The odds of that happening twice in a row are ridiculously slim. And I honestly think that the Steelers did a lot to upgrade their line. They're going to be better with Najee Harris. Kenny Pickett, hand size didn't grow, but I bet his knowledge did. And I'm telling you, he's going to be better this year at getting the ball out where it needs to go. So I like Pickens a lot too. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you got Deontay Johnson kind of going under the radar in your league, you can get him in the 8th, 9th, 10th round in some leagues. Like for me, that's the prime kind of sleeper I want. He could be a wide receiver too. It's set it and forget it kind of guy in your lineup. So Deontay's the guy that I'm leaning on, even though I freaking hate the Steelers. That's somebody who am I kidding?
I agree 100% with Andrew, by the way. Let me say about Deontay Johnson. His ADP has fallen so far that it's almost absurd. Like he's going in the same grouping as guys like Mike Evans, who's complete dust right now. Marquise Hollywood Brown with no quarterback. Treylon Burks with now Hopkins in there and already an offense that can't throw the football. It's absurd. Michael Pittman and Chris Godwin are going ahead of him, which makes I laugh my ass off. There's no reason. I yelled at somebody yesterday on a Discord stages about Godwin because I was talking about Godwin. And I was like, you got to fade away from this guy. Nobody's going to throw the ball 700 times again last year. And it's not like last year. And it's not like Tom Brady's coming back. Okay, now you got Baker Mayfield. Is Baker Mayfield going to throw the ball 600 times? No, it's not going to happen.
Not. It's a terrifying. That'd be exhausting.
He's certainly not going to throw it 600 times to his own team. That we know. But I'm fascinated. I want to know what Andrew has to say about this because if you don't like Elijah Moore, who's the other guy to eat besides Chubb and Cooper? Because there's going to be that other guy.
As much as I hate Njoku, I think he's going to have the connection. That's who I'm going with.
I like him too.
I like DPJ a lot, but I just don't know if he gets enough touches. I think Njoku's probably the guy that's the second most targets on that team. I just feel like that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to lean on Chubb because they might as well. They paid him a ton of money and they don't have much behind him. I think Watson doesn't really do well with Chubb and doesn't really play. He doesn't. That sounds really odd saying Deshaun Watson and Chubb in the same sentence, given the off the field issues. But where I'm going with some of this. This is the perfect podcast for this. What I'm saying is
I want to see you work your way out of this one.
Watson and Chubb don't do well together, so he's going to play along with Njoku over here instead, and he's going to be handing the ball off to Njoku through the air. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. But
no, I understand. There's intermediate targets available.
Correct.
And
that's where I think it's going to be.
Hunt is gone, and systematically they're available. We all know that. And Amari Cooper is getting older too. I'm looking at the young, explosive playmaking guy because I saw 2 years ago Elijah Moore just embarrass some defenses for a stretch there for about 6 weeks where you're looking and going, holy crap. And he was doing it with some crap quarterback. I was like, remember that year? It was like Josh Johnson off the scrap heap. The Jets are hilarious. I want to go back and bring up some of the Jet quarterbacks over the last couple of years, but it has been hilarious. And Elijah Moore is still showing you like this guy can do it. So I think it's going to be one of those two. Yeah. And I can't wait to see which one it is. And they're both going at such discounts that it doesn't cost you anything to take both and see which one you're right about.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't want the Browns to win. So part of it is like, just all of you fall down, twist your ankles, and I'll call it a day. That sounds great to me.
Yeah. I love all those picks, especially Elijah Moore. He was the one I had written down. Deontay Johnson, I think is definitely being slept on just from a regression standpoint. The guy can get open. The guy's going to get targets. The touchdowns are going to come, are they going to be 5, 8, maybe. but yeah, and even if Watson is just mediocre and not horrible, I think there's a lot of opportunities for Elijah Moore just because I love him as a talent. And he's had crap to deal with.
We've seen receivers need a change of scenery before. This is not unheard of.
Yep.
Like the receivers really more than anything else need the opportunity. And if you're on the wrong side of the coach or the offense is terrible or whatever, you can change teams and see a big difference in uptick in your opportunity level. So I don't hate Elijah Moore at all. I feel like I'm less on him because he hasn't proven it yet, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know if he's the guy as like the number 2 in this offense. He could be for sure. But I'd rather lean on Njoku, especially in tight end leagues where, you have to start a tight end. I think Njoku could be a top 6 tight end. As much as I hate to say it.
Njoku is always the guy where I'm just like, it always feels like, all right, this is the year Njoku is going to put it all together.
Yeah, he looks the part. He's got all he's got all the measurables. And
I mean, but
this is the year. This is it, though.
Disappoints. I mean, how many years has this been going? It feels like forever. But anyway, I know you guys have a hard stop. Derek, did you have a next question to get to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to bring this up. Absolutely, man. I agree with that 100%.
All do.
Got his hat right up here.
Yep.
Let's try it there.
But
there it is.
I was just want to say,
and for the record, Tags loved Elijah Moore. There you go.
Yes.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Sure.
But speaking on the tight ends, I know we've got Irv Smith and everybody keeps saying if he can stay healthy, this guy can probably produce tight end 1 numbers. But since you're a Patriots fan, Joe, I was going to ask you, are there any Patriots tight ends that you think they will possibly be getting rid of? And in that sense, are there any possible for the tight end 2 for the Bengals? Not fantasy wise, just
there is almost, I would say, 1% chance that Irv Smith can be a tight end 1 this year. Because there's just not enough targets available in this offense for him to do that.
More than I was.
He would have to have. Well, I mean, I don't want to say 0. Well, I'll say 1 because he could. I mean, he could have 8 touchdowns. Look, Andrew, you and I both know if you hit 7, 8 touchdowns, you're sneaking in the back door at 12. Like you're going to be that guy. I'm sorry, it's just going to happen.
Yep.
And I like Irv Smith as a player, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. You're talking about it's just not how the offense operates. I know CJ, had some big games for this team in the past, but that was very matchup based. And it wouldn't shock me if Irv Smith had 2 or 3 really good games, but he's not going to be a consistent fantasy option. I'm very excited about Mike Gesicki because Mike Gesicki's got really good hands. Mike Gesicki is a good receiving tight end who just found himself in an offense that completely pulled away from the style of play that he was good at. So the offense was just not fit for him. He was like that round peg in a square hole kind of situation. And he's the opposite of that in New England, an offense that knows how to use the tight end, especially Bill O'Brien calling plays again. So that is he's one of my favorite late throwing darts at tight end, kind of like Njoku can be one of those guys. Mike Gesicki can be one of those guys too, because there's also no alpha wide receiver with them. So it's not like there's that go-to guy. Devontae Parker is always hurt. Juju's already hurt. Like I don't even know if he's going to be on the field come a couple weeks. That's the thing. Yeah. He's dealing with this knee thing that seems to be lingering. Like I am already irritated to the moon about that. So you're looking at Tyquan Thornton. You're looking at the rest of these guys. I'm like, none of these guys matter. So Gesicki has an opportunity outside of Ramondre Stevenson, which is why I love Stevenson so much. Yeah. Now you want to talk about a guy who's going to finish potentially top 3 at RB. That's the conversation to have. Because the volume's there, the quality, the quantity, the need, it's all right there in front of him. But Gesicki is really interesting. I know Hunter Henry's still on that roster, but Gesicki is, I think, a much better bet to be placing right now. And one that I personally, in early drafts, have already put, like I drafted him in Scott Fishbowl, right? I'm taking some shots at tight end late because I'm typically the guy that goes either great or late at tight end. Like I typically don't end up with Kelsey. Andrews, I don't like the value he's at right now. Hawkinson, if he falls in the right spot, I'm good. But other than
Waller's
that, and
one I like,
Waller's but you see, Debro and Erickson love Waller. You love Waller. I'm still scared out of my mind about Waller because he's older and he has had a hard time getting on the field the last couple of years. And to answer Craig's question, I'm not a Bengals fan, but I'm the biggest Joe Burrow fan that there is. Going back to the LSU days and even Ohio State and all that stuff, right? So I love Joe B. I also coached the Bengals. I told the guys, one of the teams that I coached the NFL flag for my daughter's league. So, of course, I always represent. I got a couple Bengals shirts, too, because I love the logo, too. It's good.
I know, right?
Absolutely.
It's a great logo. I love the Bengals. I'm a fan.
Baby. Well, here, so I'll jump in real quick and say Hunter Henry, if he gets cut, I would love Hunter Henry to join the Bengals. I think that would be a terrific upgrade. I think too, with the way that the Bengals like to play the ball and they don't need a tight end that's going to catch. I think Henry is fine being that guy. But again, I just don't know if Herb is going to be able to stay healthy. I don't know if he's going to be able to produce. I don't know how, is he able to even play a full season? As in, is he conditioned enough? I think so. Again, he's better at that than I'll be at anything in my life. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we haven't seen it, and that worries me. With Henry, at least we've seen him on the field. So that's the one I'm kind of hoping is a camp cut casualty that we can sign on. And I think anybody in their right mind, especially Hunter Henry, but anybody who gets cut in one of those situations from a bad team that could possibly go to a Super Bowl contending team, I mean, why wouldn't you sign as soon as that phone rings? You're like, yeah, where do I sign? Let's go. I'm not going to wait.
Yeah.
So I think we've got some of that as a team that might actually allure, kind of drive some of these other guys to us, and in the next couple of weeks here, we'll see.
Yeah, and that's one thing I was going to say with Hunter Henry was exactly the guy I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Could we interest you in a Trenton Irwin for a Hunter Henry? Something like that. But I did see where it seemed like the Patriots were going to use a lot of tight end or 2 tight end sets this year.
Yeah, I could see them doing 12 personnel kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, you're going to see the Patriots look a lot more like a Patriot offensive years past there. Mac Jones, I mean, look.
That was going to be my question. What do you think about Mac Jones?
I want to give Mac Jones a hug. I want to give Mac Jones a hug because that was a terrible situation for any young quarterback to be in, let alone a veteran quarterback, either any quarterback. You had people trying to call plays who had no business calling plays, who had no idea what offense is. I mean, I think sometimes, and I love Bill, sometimes Bill gets too big for his britches too. And I think sometimes if you're not careful, the league's going to go by you. And sometimes that genius moniker can kind of weigh you down because you think that you're somehow Teflon from ever making mistakes. Yeah. Right. Like you think, well, we could just figure it out. We'll just put it together with glue and paper. And it's a lot easier to do that with Tom Brady than it is with a second-year quarterback. And Mac Jones' first year, I think, showed a lot of progress. I mean, Andrew will tell you this too. I was out there pounding the pavement 2 Julys ago, telling everybody when Cam Newton was there, I'm like, Mac Jones is week 1 starting. They're like, no, he's going to work. I'm like, no, he's not. He's going to be the week 1 starter.
Yep.
I'm telling y'all, just get ready now. Draft him late in your super flex leagues because that's what it's going to be. And he was okay. And you showed you moments where you're like, yeah, this is going to be all right. But the problem is the same problem with Tom Brady left. They have not done any good job of bringing in modern day NFL weapons. There's no Tyreek Hill on this offense. There is no Jamar Chase on this offense. There is no alpha wide receiver. They have a great running back in Stevenson. They did a good job there, but they have no playmakers. And that's why this team continues to tread water, especially when you remove the greatest quarterback that ever played the game away. And until they start getting in that dance and doing a better job of identifying them and bringing them in and drafting them, I mean, I'm still throwing things when they took Tyquan Thornton when Sky Moore was on the board. I still haven't gotten over that, but that's a story for another show.
Well, the AFC East is also brutal right now. It used to be the Patriots division. Now you've got the Bills, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers and Miami. I mean, that's a terrific division.
And don't be surprised if the Jets win that division because they already have a defense that is caliber to win that division.
And Breece Hall,
they were the 29th offense in points last year, the Jets. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to be good, he just has to be mediocre. If Aaron Jones is just, I'm not kidding. Too many shows. If Aaron Rodgers, I said Aaron Judge, then I said Aaron Jones, and now I'm saying, if Aaron Rodgers, who I can't stand, is my least favorite human on the planet, if he's just mediocre, that Jets team has a real shot because the Bills defense is not the same that it was 2 years ago.
True.
They got old and hurt real fast last year. The Dolphins, one hit from Tua is the season for them, I think. And then the Patriots are all the problems I just said with the Patriots. So I'm telling you right now, I've already made an investment in the Jets winning that division. And as soon as they make the playoffs, I'm going to invest heavily on the underdog in New York against them and make all the money there and laugh my ass.
I was about to say, so you're saying
that's the pattern.
I'm just a little bit of a betting guy. I'm just a little bit of a betting guy, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
But,
just
you're saying I should place my bets on the Jets.
I'm saying the plus
right
3 to 1. You're getting like 280.
I was gonna say the odds have to be
3 to 1 on that. You get some really nice numbers on that. And by the way, I'm taking over the NFL betting show this year on Betting Pros. So
nice.
Get ready for that. It's gonna be a good time. So I'll be a little less on Fantasy Pros, but a lot more on Betting Pros this year. But I'm telling you, that defense, that coach, a lot of it has to do with the health of Breece Hall. But
Mhm.
I think there's going to be a really good energy in that building to start. It's going to be it's going to be a love fest. And then that same Aaron Rodgers playoff version is going to creep in, and it's going to be fun because I'm going to make money on the back end of Jet fans' pain, which is something that I've done a lot in my life. And there's nothing I love more. I'm from the New York area, and there's nothing I love more than Jet fans with expectations. It's my favorite thing. It's adorable. It's great. But in this instance, I think there's a real opportunity here because I think Buffalo's the weakest they've been in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the Dolphins, although good defensive team, incredible weapons, I have an uneasiness there because of the Tua situation. And that you take the quarterback out of the equation, even if you do it for a month, that all of a sudden that costs you a division, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Patriots, I just don't think are ready to do that. So who does that leave? It leaves the Jets with a guy who's got this, he loves everybody and everything's great and all it's so much fun and the crowd's going to go crazy for him and all this stuff until the pressure really sets it. And then, the Cleveland Browns or somebody else is going to have to go to New York and they're going to go in there and they're going to whoop them. And Aaron Rodgers will get sacked 3 times by Myles Garrett and that game will be over. Like that's the script I'm writing. I can't wait to see if it comes to fruition.
And I know you guys are going to have to run soon. I did want to plug FantasyPros.com. I've been a long time MVP subscriber. I was telling Derek before the show started. My favorite thing about Fantasy Pros, it's $5.99 a month for like a league like mine where you have like keepers. We can trade draft picks before the draft. You can customize all that stuff and run draft simulators and really get kind of a gauge as far as who's going to be available. I've been running that countless time. I probably did like
all that draft intel
your
that
friend
they created last year.
Your friend was running it, right? Yeah.
No, he's actually doing it. So he could be
he's in the league
friend.
too. Okay.
Yeah.
That intel tool that they created where it studies the patterns of the people you draft with, and then you can draft against those robots.
Oh, it's
That's
awesome.
just because it's one thing to do mock draft simulations. It's another
stuff.
thing to do the ones that actually matter in the context of your own leagues.
That's right.
They do some amazing work there.
My playbook is terrific. I say this too. Like I'm in, over 30 leagues. I can't do it without my playbook. Like it's just I need that to like help me keep saying. So yeah,
I don't know how you do that. You're nuts.
And also,
my wife
doesn't either,
let's
limit.
not tell her. It's fine.
Still the best seller, correct?
Go buy a black book. He's right.
Yes, absolutely.
Boom. It's all over. Go buy it on Amazon right now because it updates. It updates and the cheat sheets update digital, and all those fun things. All the digital, but even I will do sporadic updates. Like I just did an update 2 weeks ago to the book. So if you're buying it now, you're getting the freshest information. Nice. Like nobody else can do that except me.
I thought you were going to say like, Joe, I thought you were like, I'm going to come to your house and change.
I'll come to your house. Write that son of a bitch right there. But no, but even the cheat sheets, when you subscribe to the cheat sheets, anytime I make an adjustment to the RPV, you get the update so that you always, whenever you have a draft that week or that day, you have the most up-to-date stuff, which is also something that those other guides on, God bless them on the newsstands, they just can't do,
Yep. Joe, I know you said you're going to be moving to a lot more betting pros. Anything you want to plug before you get out of here and tell us what you got going on?
Easier to not find me. I mean, geez, just avoid me. No, like I will be on Fantasy Pros. We've got the big Fantasy Fest in August, but come in season, I'll be doing a lot of the betting pros. So subscribe to that YouTube channel. We're gonna have some great stuff this year. Really have a great lineup of people, and we're gonna, it's time to take betting pros and blow it up like Fantasy Pros. That's my job this year. And it's going to be a fun ride. We're going to have a good time. You can also catch me on Sports Grid every Sunday talking fantasy football from 8 to 10 every single Sunday. Me and Matt Stryker, WWE ex announcer and talent. We have been on there for 4 years now. It's a fun show. It's 2 hours of fantasy football betting and like DFS and everything. So it's a great one-stop thing. You can get it on Freevee now because we're on Amazon Prime. So it's just like, it's crazy. But all of that stuff, and of course, all the Fantasy Pro stuff, but also give Andrew a follow, Andrew Hall FF, because Andrew, I've done tons of shows with him in the last couple of years. Andrew is fantastic. If you're doing Dynasty, he's a must follow. He's one of the best writers in that space. He's one of the best minds in that space, and he's a really fun, good dude. So please go follow him. Don't follow me at Joe Pisapia 17.
Follow us both that way. And I'll say this way. Obviously, I'm writing for Fantasy Pros here and there. Hit me up on Twitter. I've got Dynasty Junkies. If you like Dynasty football, which is a little deeper, it's like a keeper league on steroids, right? You keep everything all the time. I love Dynasty. So yeah, thank you, Joe, for the kind words. And then the other thing, I just wanted to check. I'll be at the expo in August. If anybody wants to come talk fantasy, come to Canton August 15th, 11th, something like that. Come talk fantasy football.
You don't even know what day you're going to be there.
I just look at my calendar. What's tomorrow, Joe? You know how it is, I'm sure.
Yeah.
My logic is come see me in the expo. It's at Canton, Ohio, Hall of Fame. It should be a great time, but that's always a really fun weekend just to talk fantasy with a bunch of random people. It's like Twitter in person, except for all the trolls stay home, so you're good. But it's genuinely a good time, and always a pleasure being on any show with you, Joe, and then any of you guys. Bengals and Brews, one of my favorite podcasts. So anytime you guys need me, let me know.
Thank you
we
so
definitely
much.
bring the brews. Hey, real quick, Andrew, I do want to say, if you want somebody to talk shit about your fantasy league, why don't you go ahead and plug what you guys got in podcast form?
We're working with Rate My League this year too. So me and Rocky are both going to be able to do a customized podcast on your league. If you want us to tear your league apart and kind of break it down, we're going to do customized podcasts to kind of get into every team with Rate My League. It's a great time. Look it up on Twitter. Rate My League is their Twitter handle, and it's in. Obviously we'll be tweeting about it a lot as we get through this. But yeah, Dynasty
That sounds
Junkies
like therapy. I want to go and yell at somebody about terrible picks they made. I want to do that.
I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, other than that, we're good to go. I'm busy just like Joe is, right? We always got a lot of things going on. That's the plan.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I apologize, Andrew. I had some dynasty specific questions written down, but we didn't get to them. I know you
You'll
guys
have to have me back. That's fine.
have to get around. We'll have you back.
Love it.
If your time allows. And again, thank you guys so much for joining. As we talked about, I know you guys are super, super busy. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Maybe
for
next time I'll find the mask.
Maybe. You look good. Don't worry.
You look good.
You look good.
All right, guys. We'll let you get going, and
Thanks, guys.
Derek and I will keep chatting. Thanks again. Take care. Awesome.
Man.
Awesome, guys. I could have talked to them for another 2 hours. I had so many more questions written down that we didn't even get to. I know there were a couple questions in chat I couldn't get to. Sorry, guys. But yeah, I am so hyped for fantasy season. It feels like it takes forever to get here, and football season in general, and then it's gone in a flash, and then you're just waiting forever for it to get here.
Flash, I know that guy. But no, those guys, just like Goodberry, the knowledge that's in these guys' heads is remarkable. I mean, that just to be able to recite all of the stuff that they know, it's insane. But yeah, they were fantastic.
Yeah,
I do want to say, for the guys that I saw a couple questions asking about my black eyes. I asked my wife some questions, and she didn't like the way I responded to her, and she did deck me a couple of times. So that's what's going on up here. But yeah, absolutely pork chop. And I did see in our Bengals and Brews group chat that Dale was making fun of me, the guy versus the guy that she thought you were, or whatever. That I love that.
That's awesome. And speaking of fantasy, we can't forget to promote our Bengals and Brews Charity Fantasy Football League. We are currently working on filling league number 4, and we are going to be giving out a signed Ted Karras jersey to the champion of all the leagues. The jersey is not signed yet, but we are going to be there Friday to get it signed. Yep. So if you want to get in, all you have to do is donate $20 or more to cincyhat.com, DM a screenshot to one of our social media accounts. Twitter is best, but we do check Facebook and Instagram periodically as well. That's all you have to do, and you are in. And it is a redraft PPR league, 10 team each, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're super excited.
Yeah, and just to clarify for everyone, the person that gets the Ted Karras signed jersey. So what we do is every year we've done the final of all of the leagues together. So once you're in the playoffs, you're going up against 6 teams in your playoffs, and then you'll go through each round, at like a normal fantasy league. And then once you get to the championship round, you're not only going against a player, it's 1 versus 2 in that championship round in your single league, but you're also going against all of the first and second league or players in every other Bengals and Brews fantasy league. So last year we had 12 teams in total, or 6 teams in total, or 6 leagues total. Sorry.
There you go.
6 leagues total, 12 teams that were all, and then the highest score of those 12 teams was the ultimate winner. So that, just to clarify for everyone.
No, that's a good explanation. Yeah, and there will still be prizes for the winners of each individual league. I know they will be a Cincy hat. Hopefully we'll be able to get them signed by Ted as well. We're still kind of working that out, but that's the plan as of now, and we're working on hopefully getting some more Derek about that at all, but maybe we can do something extra for everyone.
Yeah, we'll figure it all out. And I did see a question earlier in the chat about the Bengals defense and where we think they would rank. I know we didn't get to ask those guys what they thought, but I was going to ask you, Joe, where do you think they would project as far as, and then who do you think the best defense this year would be?
That's a good question. I saw that as well. And, I think the Bengals defense is rock solid. I think they're easily a top 10 defense. What we didn't see a ton of last year was like a ton of turnovers, a ton of defensive touchdowns. And that's what you really want from your fantasy defense. As well as from special teams. I mean, I don't think we had any special teams touchdowns as well.
Yeah.
So, and then the other, part that's going against the Bengals defense in fantasy is we have a first place schedule. Our schedule is not easy. We face some really good offenses. We play the Bills. We play the Chiefs. It's a tough schedule. And so that's why I'm not avoiding them, but if I have the, first few selections of a defense, I'm probably staying away from the Bengals. But like I said, I think they're very good, but they're much more of like a bend don't break kind of defense, and not like a great fantasy defense. And as far as like I'm trying to think, I gotta pull something up to really look at as far as DSTs.
I was going to show you this real quick.
The Cowboys is probably.
I love Dale so much. I love Dale so much.
This so much.
I love that. Hey, if you can't make fun of yourself, then what good are you, right?
So great. I didn't see that. The Cowboys is my favorite. I'm looking for a defense that has one of those crazy playmakers. The Niners are up there for me as well. The Eagles are up there, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be the Cowboys because the Micah Parsons factor. I mean, he is just an incredible playmaker. He's all over the field, and the overall defense is really solid.
Yeah, sacks, turnovers, that's where you get your points. But right now FantasyPros has the Bengals ranked as the 13th best defense.
Yep, I think that's reasonable.
Kind of middle of the pack, yeah. So if you're wanting to pick them up, you think they're going to do better than that. The strength of schedule, obviously, like you said, Joe, is pretty high. But you'll be able to pick them up, not in a Bengals centric fantasy league, obviously, but that's a team, or that's a defense where you can probably wait until after the draft. Pick up your guys that you think, those sleepers that you want to pick, and then just right before week 1, drop whoever you think or who's hurt or something like that, and then pick them up as your defense if that's the team you're wanting.
Yeah, if you're in a 12-team league and you have Mr. Irrelevant pick at the end of the draft, and that's your defense, you probably won't have a hard time getting them. The only other thing wanted to plug, Bengals and Brews merch store, bengals-and-brews.sellfi.store. We still got some koozies left, Chuck Sizzle shirts, mustache rides, Glass Shooter Security.
And just FYI, those are not mustache rides for me, so don't worry about it.
Those are a certain punter that we may or may not have had on the show.
Yeah.
And then this coming Friday at the Little Miami Brewing Company in Milford, Ted Karras and the Cincy Hat are having an event there starting at 4 p.m. They are, I know they're going to have visors and bucket hats, and you're going to be able to have a beer with Ted Karras. The whole brew crew will be there. What?
I knew I forgot a question.
What was the question?
Fantasy Pros, their podcast is sponsored by Miller Lite. I was going to ask Joe about Miller Lite and how we can get sponsored by them. I'm sorry, Dale. I dropped the ball on that.
There goes our Miller Lite sponsorship. We had the opportunity. We'll have to get Joey P on again.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're in the area, definitely stop by, say hi, have a shot with us. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Bunch of people are gonna be there. From other podcasts like the Rally Around the Natty folks. I'm sure Iceman will be there. It's gonna be sweet.
Absolutely.
Anything else you got before we wrap it, Mr. Arrow?
Nothing I can think of. Just
right.
I'm going to try to be at the whatever they call it,
Back
Family
Together?
Day, Back Together Saturday. Yeah, I'm going to try to be there for anybody that's wanting to come up there. Definitely hit us up, and we'll try to get together, and that should be a fun time as well.
Yep, for sure. I'm gonna try to see if I can make it work. But at very least, I'm definitely gonna be there Friday. Little Miami Brewing Company. All right, thanks everyone for watching. And hooday,
Hooday, baby! Let's go! It's time! Cincinnati, we gon' rise and up. In the jungle, we united up. Drippin' orange and black and white. Hooday when we fight. Live and die in these stripes. Now who gotta move rockin' on? Now who wanna move crossing on? Now who wanna move out on? If you got stripes, then you let the city know you rock 'em. Yeah, we got 'em. Yeah, we fought 'em. Like that black and orange up on 'em.